Madam Chair,
Present.
Senator DeMario,
Present.
Senator Archambault, Senator Coyne,
Here.
Senator Coleman,
Here.
Senator Miller,
Here.
Senator Rogers,
Here.
Senator Valverde.
Here.
Madam Chair, there are 7 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The committee is called to order. So tonight we have many bills on our agenda. We're looking at issues around land preservation, food systems, and we're going to be hearing a lot of testimony tonight from members of the public and also experts. We have over 100 people signed up to testify tonight, so we are going to be asking the members of the public to testify within 3 minutes, so that way we can hear from everybody who wants to testify on these bills tonight. As has been the practice, I would like to call forward all of the bills on our agenda and have them held for further study. The reason that we do this is to make sure that these bills get the full assessment of both the testimony that is being presented tonight as well as the testimony that is provided in written format that is being sent to our emails in large volumes regarding all of these bills and bills that are related to bills that are filed. Just also so the public knows, the Senate at this point has over 600 pieces of legislation filed, and many of those bills interact with the bills that are in front of us today. That being said, I would like to entertain a motion to hold for further study Senate Bill 39, Senate Bill 468, Senate Bill 469, Senate Bill 470, Senate Bill 471, Senate Bill 573. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Senator Coyne has a motion. Is there a second? Second by Senator DeMario. Okay. And Senator Coleman?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to reiterate, because I had a question about this today, that when we hold for further study, it is in respect to the commentary that we get from the community, because it's difficult to finesse a bill into its final form after we've listened to, you said over 100 people signed up to testify tonight. So in part, the reason for doing this is to make sure that the committee has an opportunity to incorporate all the feedback that it hears. So I'm happy to second this motion.
Thank you. Senator Archambault.
Yeah, thanks. Let me just weigh in quickly on that respectfully. In my 9 or 10 years up here, I haven't seen a single bill come to the committee that was in its final form. So part of the process of legislation is that these bills come to us and then there's input. I see Chairman Miller. We have a bill that's on again for surprise medical billing, and to his credit, I think that bill had, last time I recall, 14 sub meetings where we brought in every stakeholder and sat down and tried to shape that bill. Doctors on one side, insurance companies on the other. It was like the coyote and the sheepdog in the old Warner Brothers cartoon, but we made headway. And the point of analogy is that no bill comes in its final format, or I should say almost no bill. So part of the legislative process is you hold for further study, and then you have discussion and you work out the changes, and then through that amalgamation, what comes out may not satisfy one side 100% or the other, but you wind up with a good law. And that's my experience. I just wanted to weigh in on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Archambault. Is there any more discussion on this motion? Okay, hearing none, Mr. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Madam Chair,
Aye.
Senator DeMario,
Aye.
Senator Archambault,
Yes.
Senator Coyne,
Yes.
Senator Coleman,
Yes.
Senator Miller,
Yes.
Senator Rogers,
Yes.
Senator Valverde.
Yes.
Madam Chair, there are 8 in the affirmative and 0 in the negative.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Now, as has been done in our previous meetings, due to the technology that we have for these virtual meetings, what we have found is be the most efficient use of everyone's time is for the bill sponsors to introduce their bills in turn. Once the bill sponsors have had the opportunity to introduce their legislation, then we will move to public comment, and again, we will try to be efficient with everybody's time and be able to call folks once, so we may have members of the public testifying on multiple bills at the same time. That being said, I believe we have Senator DePalma with us, and Senator DePalma, would you like to introduce Senate Bill 39 for the committee?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. The legislation you see before you is a resolution. Having addressed this a few times over the last several years, what this seeks to do, it's pretty basic, that land that's been conserved by the state, for environmental management, whether it's for agricultural or money from Fish and Wildlife, that we want to have both agricultural and Fish and Wildlife cohabitate together on that same land. There's some land, I'm sure, in all of our districts. I know clearly in my district, there's several parcels, clearly one prime agricultural land in Little Compton that for decades was used agricultural. A farmer who previously owned it, sold it to the state for conservation. Great thing, can never be built upon, or most likely never built upon, remained for agriculture. Some of the money that was used was money from Fish and Wildlife. Recently, Fish and Wildlife from within the state decided that the ability for agricultural and Fish and Wildlife to cohabitate wasn't quite happening. To address that, and I'll end after this and any questions you might have, what this seeks to do is to limit Fish and Wildlife from November 1st to March 31st, 5 months, and allow agricultural to use the property for the rest of that time. Basically, April 1st to October 31st. And that's it. That's what the resolution seeks to do, is encourage DEM through agricultural means that they have, through the Fish and Wildlife Division, that property that's been conserved, preserved, and protected, whether agriculture has been there before and now, allow those two things to cohabitate together during different times of the year, and it's a win-win for everybody. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair DePalma. Are there any questions for the bill sponsor? Okay. Thank you, Chair DePalma.
Thank you very much.
The next bill we have for introduction by the sponsor is Senate Bill 468 by Senator Anderson. Senator Anderson, do you want to explain your bill?
Sure, thank you, Chair. First of all, I just wanted to make a comment. This is a really exciting day for me to be in this committee. My sincere and heartfelt thank you for moving the Act on Climate to the floor. I don't know if this is appropriate to say, but it was very exciting for me to be able to vote on that in the Senate yesterday. So thank you, all of you. And the bill I'm presenting does lower emissions, and it provides many new jobs. Now I am given the task of representing thousands of people who have worked through the Renew Coalition to introduce legislation that, as I said, will in fact lower emissions and advance the goals of the Act on Climate and restore the integrity of undeveloped land and farms through sustainable agriculture system that provides nutritious food, decent paying jobs, and regenerative agriculture practice of farming. I'm presenting this legislation on behalf of Renew, which is a coalition of grassroots organizations and community members, including farmers who for years have been working towards healthy, prosperous, and just lives, not at the expense of others, but through racial, economic, and climate justice. Some important notes beforehand. On the pandemic, before the pandemic, we had about 120,000 people in our state, including 36,000 children who struggled with food insecurity. Since the pandemic hit, of course, we know that's increased, and about 1/4 of households are now indeed feeling that food insecurity. Approximately 90% of the food that's consumed in the New England area comes from outside the region. Our food system is heavily dependent on carbon-intensive supply chains. This is a bill that's quite dense and with ambitious goals, yet they're attainable goals to transforming our food supply, how we use farmland, and how we treat our workers. Just going through it, I'll try and be brief. The Agriculture Bureau is actually not a bureau, but a program within DEM's Agriculture Department. The Regenerative Agriculture Act, which would promote ecologically sustainable or regenerative agriculture practices, minimizes the use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides, and increases the degree with which our farmland can sequester carbon. It helps local agricultural production by unhooking our state from unnecessary carbon-intensive global supply chains through which we receive the overwhelming majority of our food from giant industrialized farms, which usually practice degrading practices for the environment. The Community Agriculture Act, also known to some people as community-supported agriculture or community land trusts, would prioritize BIPOC and low-income families for community land ownership and to work in a cooperative structure to create well-paying agriculture jobs and locally grown organic food. The Parks and Rec land acquisition, which through existing provisions of the statute 32-2-1, would acquire lands for the next part of the bill, which is the Ecosystem Restoration Act. This would restore biodiversity to land by restoring natural habitats, particularly in vulnerable or heavily degraded areas of our state, such as wetlands, and in order to create self-sustaining ecosystems. At the end, there's also, well, it's in the bill, it's a smaller program, the Garden Agriculture Act, which would give everyone within the state on the lower income scale a chance to grow their own organic food. It's a big bill, many components, and I'm sure everyone wonders how to pay for it. Some of the revenue sources have been brought up before. I wanted to mention the conveyance tax on large real estate purchases. That could bring in a certain amount of money. Also freeing nonviolent drug offenders after the marijuana legislation is put through, which would also generate money. So those are the basics of the whole Agriculture Bureau Act. And there will be later some experts who can go into more detail. But I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Senator Anderson. Senator Rogers has a question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Senator, I got one question, and I didn't go through in detail because it is a large bill, and I've been seeing a lot of bills with a lot of detail lately coming over my desk and on my committee assignments. But right under the bill, on the paperwork here, it says it also broadens the state power to take land. In what manner would that be, and why is that needed in the bill to have the state take land? Because that scares me.
I know. I anticipated this question, and it's under the DEM would actually be taking the land. It's under the Parks and Rec land acquisition provisions of 32-2-1. That they're already that's already a law in order to take empty lands for Parks and Rec. This would be then DEM could use that land or be working on the biodiversity of that land to restore it back to health. Because when any human, encounters land, it will degrade to a certain degree. So that's what it's used for. But there are existing laws already in place to make that possible.
Just a quick suggestion, and maybe we can have a conversation later. I know a lot of farmers. I raised in this house. We milk 60 cows a day, 7 days a week. And over the years, a lot of farmers, so they wouldn't cut their property up, sold the development rights. And I do know a lot of those farmers that now, because it's been so long, those benefits that they've reaped, they're actually struggling today, thinking it would have been enough to carry them on longer than it actually did. And I do see a lot of these lands where a lot of these farmers are looking for a way to keep it rural, but allow it to be processed and farmed. And that you may want to look into some of the farms that have the development rights paid for and are looking for some other type of revenue to generate what co-op farming, like I think what you're going for with this bill. And it would help them. It would continue for the purpose that it was intended for. And these farmers, I know one down the road, one of the most beautiful barns. It's probably about 200 feet down, 10,000 bales, built by him and his grandfather. That it's falling in, and it's going to be a shame to lose that barn. And the reason it's falling in, they no longer have the benefit to fix it because the money from the development rights that they got 20 years ago didn't go as far as it should. So it's a shame he's losing it. I tried to see what I could do on a historical thing, but there really wasn't much I could do. But he has 80 acres of open pasture that I'm sure if he could do some kind of co-oping agreement would allow it to be farmed where it doesn't generate much of his, and he's older now, but it would also help reap the benefits of repairing such thing as that barn before we start condemning land and broadening the state's powers to take land. I think there's plenty out there in many avenues that I'd love to sit down with you and discuss that will help the existing farmers in the land that we want to keep, that we've already paid for to keep rural.
Well, I would love to talk to you, and all these suggestions are very welcome. And I was so glad at the beginning of this for Senator Archibald and Senator Coleman to remind us of how bills evolve and grow and get better with changes. So, did you have another thing you wanted to say?
Just one more comment. You're going to find, with the allowance from the chair, what you're going to find is with many of us, we agree on the problem. Many times we agree on the problem, but it's how we fix that problem is what we disagree on. So that's where we need to talk and come up with ideas. As we agree there is a problem, on how we fix it is where we have discourse, and we need to have that discussion.
Yeah, and you did touch on
Senator Senator Anderson.
I'm sorry.
No, the conversation needs to flow through the chair just so we can maintain a dialogue. It's very challenging in the digital
Absolutely.
space. Appreciate that. Senator Rogers, did you have any follow-up questions about that? So I think Senator Anderson, if you want to connect with Senator Rogers and you can discuss those issues, and I'm sure he can happily lend his expertise and experience to this discussion. Are there other committee members who had any questions for the sponsor on this bill? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Senator Anderson. Appreciate you. And our next bill is Senate Bill 469 with Senator DeMario. Senator DeMario, would you like to explain this bill for the committee?
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. So this is the first of 3 bills that I am going to present tonight that have the goal of creating a future of food systems that are sustainable, safe, healthy, humane, and equitable. The goal of this bill is to affirm support for the model of smaller scale local farms that we have here in Rhode Island, and to add to the national conversation around moving food production away from concentrated animal feeding operations, or CAFOs. And so I want to pause here for a second because, I want to just address the idea of the intent of this bill and being cautious of the potential impact. The intent of this bill is really to prevent any of these types of operations from opening here in Rhode Island. I have been made aware from some advocates and from some local farms that the current wording of this bill could potentially have an impact on existing farms here in Rhode Island, which is not my intent. And so that is certainly, going back to this discussion of, being able to revise this to make sure that that impact matches the intent. I just wanted to acknowledge that here. So the purpose of trying to prevent the operation of CAFOs here in Rhode Island is that they are the opposite of sustainable, as they require increasing amounts of government subsidies to manage their huge overhead costs. They are not safe, as they pollute the air and water in the communities they occupy. To share one statistic, according to the EPA, waste runoff from industrial animal farms has caused significant measurable drinking water impairment in 29 states. They are also not healthy or humane, as the high numbers of stressed animals in close contact lead to an increased use of antibiotics to control disease, which then in turn leads to antibiotic-resistant bacteria that further contaminates water and farmlands. And the negative impacts of CAFOs also exacerbate inequalities. Communities of color nationwide and low-income communities tend to lack the political power to stop CAFOs from being sited in their communities, and therefore are disproportionately burdened with the environmental and health consequences, as well as lowered property values of their proximity to CAFOs. So Rhode Island has the opportunity with this bill to support the nationwide move away from this harmful agricultural model and toward a food system that recenters family and local farms.
Thank you, Senator DeMario. Are there any questions for the bill sponsor? Senator Archambault.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I appreciate Vice Chair DeMario's passion and desire to follow a national model on a sentiment that will bring more local farms into fruition and help those smaller farms to flourish. I do have some comments. Obviously, the largest beef farm in the state is in my town, and that is Blackbird Farm. That's run by the Boutelays. They are the salt of the earth when it comes to farmers. They actually raise a specialized form of Angus that they sell as Kobe beef. There are small silos on the farm with a feed that's very specific to these cattle, and they are about as high grade as you can get and very expensive. It's not cheap beef. And the Boutelays also do this farmers market down on Route 7. If anybody's been up in the area and there's this large Baptist church, there's a farmers market that goes on every Sunday, and they've been running it year round. They bring in Christmas tree farming, and they're really the essence of what I would consider a model for promoting small farms. And so my understanding of the genesis of the bill is that on the House side, the rep, when he put this in, wanted to have this model that would, get rid of industrialized farming and my concerns. And we could talk more, Vice Chair. I'll talk to you more about it after. But in a nutshell, just several important concerns that I have. Number one is we don't have any industrialized farming in Rhode Island. It doesn't exist. These are farms that have thousands of animals that are fed waste from nursing homes, for example, and are given hormones. We don't have that in Rhode Island. The Boutelays at any one time may have as much as 250 animals, but I caution any type of limitation on the number of animals, simply because Rhode Island doesn't have the ability to have that scale of farming, even if someone were to want to do it. And I hesitate to use the word impossible, but it's impossible. The Boutelays are a farm to fork model. Some will say farm to table, but farm to fork is the phrase they use. These animals are literally farmed, and then you get this high quality meat. Roger Williams University takes their animals for sale after. There are some other high-end restaurants that buy these animals just waiting to get them. And so and I use them as an example because they're in my district. They're a model of farming that we really want to preserve in Rhode Island. It's a sad thing. I'm looking out my windows at fields, empty fields of the farm that I grew up on, and I bought this farm. This is an old house, 1720 farmhouse. My dad was a dairy farmer. He had about 50 head of Holstein, very high level cows, very high grade. He took super good care of them. And I wouldn't know the first thing about dairy farming today. I'm a lawyer, and so I set my farm up for a small amount of beef cattle in hay. But the point is, we have only a small number of farms left in Rhode Island, and we have to preserve those farms. So the intent of what you're trying to do, Vice Chair, is extremely laudable. And I'm with you. I'll help you any way I can in my capacity. But I think we have to be really mindful of this concept of industrialized farming. It doesn't exist in Rhode Island, and banning, farms based on a label wouldn't be the right intent. I'm so glad you're the one that has the bill because you're so open-minded to it. The Boutellets did invite the rep to go to their farm. My understanding is he hasn't done so as of yet. You may want to check out Blackbird Farm. It's pretty cool. Your kids, I'm sure, would love it. It's a really nice facility, and they're just wonderful people. So I'll stop there. But those are my thoughts initially.
Thank you, Senator Archibald. Senator Rogers.
For the opportunity, Chair. I'd also be remiss. Agriculture is in my wheelhouse and been my life. I do have, and I did, of all the bills, this is one of the ones I did particularly pay attention to. It was brought to attention by somebody who would be affected in my district, and I'm literally looking at his farm across the street from my house right now. And a couple big points about this. Like I said, I was raised on that farm milking Holsteins with my family. And we went out because, unfortunately, 65 cows could not afford to pay the taxes, and they had to get jobs. And in my community, a large farm was 80, and they've all gone out. There were very large chicken farms, because chicken farms don't take as much space up as a dairy cow does, and that's where I'm going with this. The largest employer in the town of which I grew up with is a chicken farm. I don't have to mention the name, but it's also important to understand that when we hit COVID, we were actually pretty lucky to have that facility in the state of Rhode Island, because if it got much worse and the borders were shut down, his facility is distributing dairy, cheese, milk, chicken, all kinds of products. So if this puts farms out like that, they do more than just produce other things. They are diversified, and when you do that, it has ramifications that go far beyond the intent. I will have to agree with Mr. Archambault. There will never be farming in this state. This is in Kansas. We don't have the product. We don't have the fields. We don't have. Shortly over the line in Connecticut, there are some large chicken farms, and they are going out of business regularly. So I understand your point, but again, the unintended consequences would actually affect almost one or two in the state that we really do need. So that's only my point. If you want input on it, I'd be more than happy to show you the farm and show you up around here where it does good for the community and the employees. Again, largest employer in my town. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Rogers. Go ahead, Senator DeMario.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Senator Archambault and Senator Rogers for your input. I have actually had the opportunity to visit Blackbird Farm just as a private citizen customer for many years. I am a big fan of eating local and making sure to support those local farms. And to your point, Senator Rogers, one of the other issues in terms of a sustainable food system is making sure that, as you mentioned, with emergency preparedness even, that we're incorporating local agriculture down here in my neck of the woods. We focus a lot on the fishermen and things like that, but those types of resources are essential. And again, like I said, I do want to be very mindful of what the intent of this bill is versus the potential impact, and so I certainly welcome that further conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator DeMario. Senator Valverde, did you have a comment or question? Yep, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I guess are we Are we talking about just to, I guess, make changes to this bill would just be kind of raising the numbers of the number of animals that are mentioned in this bill?
Senator.
Is that question directed at me? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead, Senator DeMario, yes.
So from the feedback that I've received so far, it does seem like, in order to, again, hit that spot of the intended impact, which is, again, adding to that national conversation of moving away from this type of large-scale industrial agriculture to hopefully then create a demand for more of these smaller local farms to thrive while also not impacting any current farms in business in Rhode Island. I think that a further conversation about exactly like those limits would need to be talked about.
Thank you, Senator DeMario. Are there further questions for the sponsor on this bill? Okay, hearing none. The next bill on our agenda is Senate Bill 470. This bill is sponsored by Chairman Chacon, and Chairman Chacon is currently in the Labor Committee, so he's unable to testify this evening with us. I'll read the brief description, and he also has asked John Campanini from the Rhode Island Tree Council to provide expert testimony on this, and he's on our call list for tonight. But generally, the bill creates a Forest Conservation Commission overseen by the Department of Environmental Management. The commission shall consist of the directors of DEM and DOA, along with 9 members of the public appointed by the director of DEM. The purpose of the commission is to assess forest land, identify funding sources for forest conservation, increase and create new markets for the state's forest products industry, improve urban and community forestry, and encourage stakeholder engagement. The commission is also charged with defining, inventorying, and informing the public about the state's most important forest land. The commission shall establish a forest conservation fund. So with that, I would ask the committee to direct any questions to Chairman Chacon and also to the witnesses on that bill tonight. The next bill in front of us is Senate Bill 471, which is also Senator DeMario. So Senator DeMario, go ahead.
Thank you. So this bill would prohibit the sale of force-fed poultry products in Rhode Island. I'll refer back to my previous statement about the intention of working toward a food system that is sustainable, safe, healthy, humane, and equitable. And this bill addresses the humane part of that goal. The production of force-fed poultry products, commonly known as foie gras, is so cruel that it's actually been outlawed in more than a dozen countries, as well as the state of California and New York City. Foie gras production involves force-feeding ducks and geese via a pipe in order to grow their livers. And this extreme cruelty is not a necessary part of getting our communities fed or sustaining any particular Rhode Island business. And so I'm sure a lot of you have received a lot of written testimony on this bill. There is a lot of strong support from a lot of animal advocacy groups, and I'm sure we'll hear some testimony about that as well.
Thank you, Senator DeMario. Are there questions on this bill? Okay, seeing none, if you, Senator DeMario, if you want to go ahead and explain Senate Bill 573.
So again, going back to that idea of the type of food systems that we want to create, this bill would impose a moratorium on any new live or also known as wet markets in the state of Rhode Island. And so this addresses that idea of creating food systems that are healthy. Again, as many of you have seen in the written testimony, and we'll hear from a lot of experts who can speak to this in much more detail, the risk with these live or wet markets is that they hold animals in stressed conditions, and there is the high possibility for the transfer of disease, which can then transfer to humans. And so, the potential consequences of this in terms of the health of our communities and the health of our food systems, make it so that it really doesn't make sense to be able to allow any additional live markets to be able to operate in the state of Rhode Island. I'm sorry. Can I just add one more comment?
Yes, go ahead.
I also just wanted to acknowledge that I did receive some feedback from DEM and from some other people who were concerned that the current language of this bill could actually impact some of those small family livestock farms from being able to slaughter their animals on premises and sell them. That is not the intention of this bill. And so again, I'm interested in making sure that we get that right so that there is not that unintended impact, because again, that idea of farm to fork, as Senator Archambault referred to, is exactly the type of food system that I want to be promoting, not inhibiting.
Thank you, Senator DeMario. Are there any other questions for Senator DeMario on any of these bills? Okay, hearing none, we're going to be moving on to public testimony, and there are, as I mentioned, there are a number of callers. We have over 100 folks signed up to testify tonight. So, as I mentioned at the top, we're facing a lot of serious issues are in front of us tonight, and the committee really does understand the urgency and the concern that we need to find the best course of action on many important issues facing our state. So, in fact, that's why we're here, is to hear from the public on these bills. So I just want to encourage anyone who's giving verbal testimony tonight to remember how serious these issues are, and to be respectful of the fellow advocates by keeping the hearing focused as a productive use of time as a discussion of the legislation in front of us. With that, I believe we should have our first caller will be joining us, and I believe it is going to be David Dedekian. And so, David, welcome to the committee. And I think there's a little bit of a lag on the audio, so you are live with us now, and I believe you might be testifying on more than one bill, so you can go ahead and start your testimony. Let us know your name, if you're representing an organization, and what bills you're testifying on, and you can go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. I appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening to you and the committee. My name is David Dedekian. I run Eat Drink Rhode Island, but I'm also representing Blackbird Farm on three of the bills that we just discussed: 469, the factory farming; 471, the force feeding poultry; and 573, the live markets. I will try and be very brief, since also Senator Archambault did such a brilliant job of promoting the farm for me. I've been with Blackbird Farm for 13 years. I do all of their marketing campaigns and PR, and run the farmers market that he talked about. And since he did such a brilliant job, I guess my job must be pretty good. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Senator. Specifically to 469 and to Blackbird Farm and to all sorts of meat farms across the state, I've been part of Blackbird for 13 years. I've worked against factory farming for about 20 years at this point. I haven't eaten any meat from a factory farm in that time as well. It's not always easy, but I've been able to do this for 20 years. I just want to jump. I have a lot of things to say, but I'm going to just jump to the point that it feels like in all three of these bills, but specifically in this one, we're trying to legislate something that it cannot happen within our state. In order for us to have one of these CAFOs, which I have seen, I have been out west, I've driven down the road in Texas, past thousands of head of cattle for what felt like hours and days, and it's obscene, and I've seen the pools of pink slime in giant, vats across the South. We can't even approach that physically here. We don't have the infrastructure here. We don't have the land here. We don't have the employees here to be able to handle something like that. And we certainly don't have the slaughter facilities anywhere in New England to handle the amount of animals that we're discussing here. So I worry about legislating against something that could never happen. And just, I know having met and worked with all the meat farmers across the state and across a lot of southern New England, the animals and the care that they give these animals is better than a lot of the people in the state are treated. To be quite honest with you, it's just they love these animals so much and take care of them so well, so that they can get a great product onto the plates of the community. And there's also, I think Senator Archambault pointed out, during the pandemic, it has been crucial for these local food sources, especially when supermarkets and things like that sold out of things. We were a backbone for people in this state to have food. I know there's also an environmental issue with the factory farm, but again, nothing in the state could ever approach the level of environmental damage from these animals that we have here. Methane, which comes from the cattle and pig waste, is a greenhouse gas, but it breaks down in 10 years as opposed to carbon, which takes 100 years. And there's so many other carbon pollutants in this state. I couldn't even begin to list. We'll just start with cars that are certainly much more damaging to anything that the animal farming could do. So that's my statement on animal farming. I have a ton more information if people have questions, but I'll stop there. Regarding the force-fed poultry, I know this is a hot button topic. It's come up many times in the last few years. I have talked with many of the farmers across the country who do this type of food product called foie gras. The process that many of us think we know, it's called gavage, it's a French term. It's obviously a French word, as usual, is much nicer than force-fed. It doesn't really exist anymore in modern foie gras production. Ducks and geese have this very odd ability, it's evolution, to swallow anything and everything that they want without any limitation, which causes their livers to get fat, which causes them to store up energy during the winters and keeps them afloat on the ponds and lakes. You don't have to, yes. In previous years, many years ago, especially in France and Egypt and other parts of the country for thousands of years, other parts of the world for thousands of years, farmers would put tubes down the animals' throats and forcibly cause them to eat. That doesn't need to be done anymore. Technology-wise, they've come to the conclusion that if you leave the food and the ability for these animals to take, they will do that themselves, to themselves. So the humane aspect of it is practically non-existent, at least here in this country. I can't speak to practices outside of America. Banning a food and drink product is always, something that will negatively impact many, many businesses besides the farms. There's also distributors, restaurants, markets. All these farms and facilities try to, again, produce a product that is the most responsibly raised because that's what the consumers in the country have come to demand. It's just plain capitalism. People don't buy a product that they don't want. They don't care how it's treated and they know how it's raised. That's why a lot of the veal industry has gone away from pens to rosé veal because people thought that was humane, which it is. And so, to ban a product for this just impacts way too many businesses. And again, it seems more scare tactic than anything else. I again don't see a need for legislating something that doesn't really exist. And then finally, on the world of legislating things that don't really exist, we don't have live markets like is described in this bill in this country at all because we have a USDA and an FDA. We don't have anything approaching that here. We have one market at the moment in Providence that is being grandfathered in for many years that people can go in and choose their poultry and have it slaughtered and served for them. But that is leaps and bounds safer than the poultry you can buy at Stop and Shop, realistically speaking. The USDA allows poultry facilities like Cargill and Smithfield and all the rest to slaughter 3 birds per second. Those birds are slaughtered and packaged and sold fresh at the supermarket. And there's no more safety controls over it than you would find at a local person who's doing one at a time. And to be honest, the one at a time is much safer because they're taking their time, they're a trained person. And I mean, we've never had a recall of anything like that. We've never had reports of markets here in Rhode Island causing anyone to get sick. The COVID aspect of this bill disturbs me a bit because it seems a bit, again, a scare tactic. I hate to say it. But again, we're legislating something that just does not exist here. And to be quite frank, fresh meat here would be a huge leap forward for the meat community in Rhode Island. And if we could legislate that, that would be even better. So I raced through there. I hope it made sense. I appreciate your time. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I can speak to meat farming, slaughterhouse. I've done slaughter myself personally, raising poultry. I've slaughtered ducks myself as well and butchered for the foie gras. So I can answer any questions if anyone wants anything to be specific to these bills. Thank you.
Thank you. And I did give you additional time since you were testifying on multiple bills, but I do appreciate you covering 3 bills in such an abbreviated time frame. I know that there are questions from the committee for you. I believe Senator Archambault had a question.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. More of a welcoming for Dave to the committee, and I really appreciate his kind words. I'm really just following his lead in the thoughts and process of trying to make something that's workable for everybody, and I thank the Vice Chair for that as well. So, and Anne Marie Boutelet and all the work that she does. It's just a treasure to have Blackbird Farm in our town, and the corner of land that is on Route 7. It's zone commercial, and it's a piece of land that's very valuable, could easily have been developed. There were some developers looking at it, and the Boutelets came in and bought that land, and they kept these cows on it, right? There's a donkey there. They've got little goats that the little kids can come and see, and it's a treasure. It's a gem, and it used to be called the Steer Farm when I was a kid. Their last name was Steer. They used to sell ice cream there as well, but it's still there because of the Boutelets. And farming's tough work. They work exceptionally hard, and yet they're doing every aspect of the spectrum on it to promote small farming and keep it alive and vibrant for the state. So I'm just proud to have them there. I think it's great that the Vice Chair is going out there and knows the farm. And so I just want to welcome Dave and thank him for his input and his thoughts when it comes to preserving local farming. And whatever you're doing, man, you're doing it right there. Just keep the faith. They also bring in these trucks, these food trucks, which is great. Now they've got the smokehouse thing there with the mesquite wood. So whenever I pull up to the red light, all I smell is the mesquite wood. Whether I'm hungry or not, I want to pull in and eat. So anyways, just keep doing what you're doing. I think it's great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Archambault. Are there any other comments or questions for this witness? Senator Miller, go ahead.
Yeah, I can't imagine that you wouldn't find room to eat something if you were attracted to it, Senator Archambault. But I just wanted to, I know there's a lot of unintended consequences on some of this legislation, and that Senator DeMario is interested in addressing those unintended consequences. And anybody who's had duck on a menu at a restaurant has probably noticed often, especially in the Northeast, that it came from Long Island. And based on the conversation around foie gras, a lot of those farmers who raise ducks in Long Island have gone out of their way to make sure they're not feeding those ducks, because some of the foie gras is from ducks rather than geese, and or they raise both, and they go out of their way to make sure they're fed ethically rather than historically how people perceive foie gras to be raised. And I assume that this legislation would not want to harm those small farmers there that are trying to actually react to the historical way that foie gras, and because they still call it foie gras because they get a higher price for something that is often thrown away. Offal, as it's known in many places, because it's an organ, is often thrown away and not consumed unless you give it a label like foie gras. So I hope, like you heard the testimony from David, that we don't want the unintended consequence of somebody who's trying to react positively to what the intent of this legislation by raising what is labeled as foie gras so they can get the price for it, to not be allowed in the Rhode Island market.
Thank you, Chair Miller. Are there any other questions or comments from the committee for this witness? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Dave. Good to hear from you. And as you know, I have a great love of food trucks, so I always love when that comes into conversation on the committee. So with that, I believe we will have our next witness, which should be John Campanini from the Rhode Island Tree Council. John, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Here, this Chairwoman Oya?
Yes, this is. You're on with the committee. And if you want to go ahead and state if you're with, I said you're with the Rhode Island Tree Council, if you're representing anyone else and what bills you're testifying on, and you can go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you. Thank you for providing the Rhode Island Tree Council, the state's leading tree advocacy group, the opportunity to comment on S470. The Rhode Island Tree Council supports this legislation. We applaud the extent and scope of the proposed legislation. The bill identifies 7 objectives. Most of them were found in the Values of Rhode Island Forest Report, which was published in 2019. They do not appear in this bill willy-nilly, but they came from the consolidation of over 167 findings that were found in that report. I would like to discuss one aspect of this report, which I believe will have the greatest impact if approved, and that is to study and assess and use urban and community forests to our advantage. Over 238,000 acres are devoted to urban and community forests throughout Rhode Island. 85% of the people live within these areas. They basically start in Woonsocket, the urban areas from Woonsocket, all the way down to Westerly, running like a spine down the central portion of our metropolitan areas. Urban and community forests are invaluable because of the way they function and the benefits they provide, from cleaning air, stormwater management, to even health benefits. I was dismayed last year by a report in the State of the Air report done by the American Lung Association, which showed that Rhode Island's air quality is among the poorest in the nation, and that 87% of Rhode Islanders living in these metro areas are breathing unhealthy air. Urban and community forests, by maintaining, improving, and sustaining them, we can solve many of these major health problems and improve the quality of life in not only urban areas but also in our suburban and rural forests. The Rhode Island Tree Council stands ready to assist in the implementation and development of this act, and we applaud all the hard work of this committee, and we hope that you will recommend it for approval with the General Assembly. Thank you very much for giving me the time to testify.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Are there any questions or comments for this witness? Okay. Thank you so much, John. Appreciate your testimony. And I believe next we will have Ken Ayers joining us. So Ken, are you with us?
I'm with you.
Ken, if you could introduce yourself to the committee, and you can go ahead with your testimony. Let us know what bill or bills you're testifying on.
Sure. My name is Ken Ayers. I'm Chief of the Divisions of Agriculture and Forestry at Rhode Island DEM. Why don't we start off with 470, the Forestry Conservation Act?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so DEM wishes to express its support for this bill. It's something that we support in terms of setting the stage and policy for the importance of forest resources in the state. We're already actively involved in such. The bill itself is modeled after the Farmland Preservation Act, which is longstanding legislation which created the baseline policy for farmland preservation around. It was passed in the early 1980s, legislation that we've long worked with. Since then, over close to 120 farms have been protected, over 8,000 acres of farmland. A lot of work has already been done to protect forestry resources in the state. DEM itself owns 47,000 acres of forest land, protects another 30, but there's no place in state statute that sets out the framework for forestry, the value of forestry, and why it should be protected. And doing so in legislation is also typically a precursor for a lot of programs that are needed to support such efforts. This is what this bill is intended to do. It's an entirely voluntary effort, setting up a conservation commission to work together to, tabulate the extent of forestry resources. A lot of that work's already been done in the state, but allow other programs to work off of that, develop it from it, again, in an entirely voluntary manner. And we believe it's important. It's important for the first time that in legislation, as is so true of farmland in Rhode Island, we set the framework for the value of forestry resources, and that's where we are supportive of the bill. So.
Thank you. There's a question from Senator Rogers.
No, not so much a question, but just a shout out and a thank you to Ken Ayers. Ken Ayers has been invaluable. I've known Ken for many years, even before I became a state senator, dealing with farm issues throughout the state and primarily in the town of Forest and other stuff. So he's an invaluable voice to the state, and I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize him and call him out for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator.
And Senator Archambault.
Yeah, just briefly, I want to welcome Ken as well. And the only issue we have with Ken is the how long in the teeth he is. We might lose him. That's the sad part. I think he's the longest serving chief in the country. And but I think you're my age, Ken. So don't go anywhere fast, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Are there any other questions? All right. And Ken, I believe you wanted to testify on another bill as well. You can go ahead.
468. Yeah, so we want to express our support and concept, DM does, for 468. We had a long conversation with a sponsor yesterday, and she characterized this as a start of a conversation. It's a big, complicated bill with many moving parts to it, but many of the concepts are ones that we already at DM support and embody. And one of the things that we learned due to the ongoing pandemic, and hopefully we're on the downside of that and believe that we are, is that there are some cracks in the overall food system. That long food system that supplies food to Rhode Island from South America to California to here, we're at the very end of it, isn't as always so stable and secure as we would want it to be, and that's all the more reason that we help develop a far more locally based regional food system, more reliance upon our local farmers and producers, and is far more resilient than it is right now. The pandemic is one shock. There are other shocks which happen, and you can think about the freeze in Texas or the effects of climate change or many other things that constrain what we've typically relied upon our food system over the years. With that in mind, I think we want to take the lessons learned and look forward and develop a food system that is far more resilient and deeper than it is and closer than it is right now. Much of what's in that bill we already do in some form or fashion. And so I think what we would want to do is expand upon existing efforts, whether that means more human resources or more funding to capture elements that we aren't able to capture, of which there are some of them are talked about in that bill, and work off the existing framework that exists in the state. Our policy and practice in state government is not to take a top-down approach to such. We rely upon partnerships, of which there are many valuable ones in Rhode Island, Farm Fresh Rhode Island, Southside Community Land Trust, Hope and Maine, and many others. And we have an ecosystem of effort that is exceptional in this state. We're not siloed in our approach. And so we're all open to the suggestions in the bill, but certainly need to think about how we get the resources to make it happen, how we expand existing legislation and programs to incorporate what's in there. But we want to express our support for the concepts and goals, and we're looking forward to being part of the conversation as we look forward.
Thank you, Ken. Are there any questions, any follow-up questions for Mr. Ayers? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. And I anticipate you'll have some follow-up conversations with the bill sponsors.
Thank you so much.
And I believe we are going to be joined with Scott Millar, should be joining us. And Scott, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Scott, welcome to the committee. If you could introduce yourself, let us know if what organization you represent, and you can go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Scott Millar. I'm the Director of Community Assistance and Conservation with GrowSmart Rhode Island. And if I may, I'd also like to weigh in as a proud owner of 45 acres of forest in the town of Exeter. Rhode Island is approximately 56% forested, which is a really impressive figure in the second most densely populated state in the country. Our forests are being fragmented as they are cut into smaller segments at a pretty alarming rate. As the forest is fragmented, some values are impaired and others can be lost completely. We commend the sponsors of this important legislation for recognizing the time to act is now. We also commend the leadership of DEM to take on this challenging but worthy goal. We support the Forest Conservation Act for the following reasons. First, we're extremely pleased that it clearly recognizes that forest land has many important values. It cites these values and establishes policy that these important values be maintained for future generations to enjoy. This is the first time that Rhode Island's forest values have been recognized in state law. Other natural resources, including but not limited to farms, wetlands, have been previously recognized, as Ken Ayers mentioned previously. Number two, we strongly support the establishment of a Forest Conservation Commission to be staffed by DEM, and we believe the 7 objectives cited will help landowners conserve forests in perpetuity, encourage better forest management, encourage forest conservation as a means to sequester carbon and mitigate climate change. And it's also going to help to create jobs in the forest products industry. That's an industry that we feel is really poised to grow. And lastly, expand urban and community forestry programs. And thirdly, the Act uses incentives. There's no new regulations or restrictions to encourage really some good positive outcomes. And lastly, this legislation to encourage forest conservation is long overdue. Thank you so much for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you so much, Scott. Does anyone have any questions for this witness? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Scott, for your time.
Thank you.
And I believe we should be joined by our next witness, who is Mark Tremblay. And Mark, you should be on with the committee, and if you want to let us know what organization you're representing and what bill you're testifying on, and you can go ahead with your testimony.
Okay. So my name is Mark Tremblay. I'm a forester, and I am representing the Rhode Island chapter of the Society of American Foresters, and we're speaking in support of the Forest Conservation Act. As a consulting forester, professional forester, I work with hundreds of landowners around the state. They all have real good intent to hold on to their land and make it productive. And the entire effort of this legislation, which is being, Scott Millar did a great job explaining it, as did John Campanini, and we're in full support of having this legislation approved. I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for this witness? Okay, hearing none. Thank you so much for your testimony tonight.
Thank you.
And we'll be joined with our next member of the public in just momentarily. So I believe we're joined now by Christopher Riley. Christopher, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, welcome to the committee. You can go ahead and let us know if you're representing an organization, what bill you're testifying on, and you can go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you. I am representing my consulting forestry business, Sweet Birch Consulting, and I am testifying in support of S470.
You can go ahead.
And as the owner of a business, part of Rhode Island's forest-based economy, I want to say that I strongly support the Forest Conservation Act because this bill will create incentives for forest conservation with no new regulations or restrictions that will help create new jobs, assist small businesses, support forestry programs in urban communities, and it'll maintain the many values Rhode Island's forests provide for future generations. I believe that we need to recognize our state's forests as a quiet but steady economic engine. The 2019 study that was conducted by URI, which found that the forestry and wood products industry annually contributes more than 4,800 jobs and $716 million to the state economy. Meanwhile, forest-based recreation adds another 1,500 jobs and $375 million. And then more than 500,000 people participate in hunting, fishing, and wildlife watching activities every year. And then at the same time, Rhode Island's woodlands are one of the state's most valuable resources for climate change resiliency. And I think we need to keep our forests as forests rather than losing them to other land uses. Because trees are our most effective method for removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and research suggests that Rhode Island's forests can offset a high percentage of vehicle emissions in the state. And as Ken Ayers noted, Rhode Island already recognizes the value of farms, because in the 1980s, the state set up a program to buy development rights for the best farms, but there's currently nothing comparable for high conservation value forest land, and I believe the establishment of a similar Forest Conservation Commission in Rhode Island is overdue. And thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this witness? Okay, hearing none, thank you. We appreciate your testimony.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
And I believe we will be joined by our next witness. If the committee can hold on for just a minute, we're getting the next witness. Okay, now I believe we have Hank Webster with us. Hank, are you with us?
I am here. Thank you very much, Chair Oyer, and thank you also for your leadership on the Act on Climate, extremely important for Rhode Island. My name is Hank Webster. I am the Rhode Island Director of Acadia Center, and that is a clean energy nonprofit research and advocacy organization operating throughout the Northeast. I'm here to testify in support of S470 in that it better balances the value of forests with the development value of land. Whether that development value is for housing or renewable energy. Acadia Center supports the development of renewable energy, of course. It is necessary to reduce carbon emissions and air pollution, and it's good for our economy. But we also want that renewable energy development to be responsibly sited. And that means trying to site it as much as possible on previously disturbed sites or on dual-use space like rooftops or even parking lots. And Acadia Center participated as part of the state's solar siting stakeholder group, and we partnered with the American Farmland Trust to explore ways that portions of cleared farmland could be used both for continued agricultural production while also hosting renewable energy development. That's a good deal for farmers, especially in our climate where you might not be able to produce year-round, but you could produce some revenues and keep that farm alive. This legislation strikes an important balance. It doesn't ban development of these important forested tracts if an owner wants to pursue that, but it better incentivizes landowners to keep it forested instead of clear-cutting for single-family housing or energy development. If I can switch hats just for a moment, I am also the volunteer chair of my local land trust, and this is exactly the way that we protect land in our town. Through financial incentives to help property owners with good intentions who want to maintain the nature of their forested areas. So in closing, we need both clean energy development and to protect forest habitat. There is a way for those two activities to better coexist, and this is a good step forward. And I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Hank. Appreciate that. And do any members of the committee have any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
I believe now we should be joined by Meg Kerr. And Meg, if you would let the committee know what organization you're representing, what bill you're testifying on, and you can go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you very much, Chair Oyer and members of the committee. My name is Meg Kerr, and I'm the Director of Policy at the Audubon Society of Rhode Island. And we support the Senate Bill 470, the Forest Conservation Act. We do have one small amendment we'd like to recommend to the committee. As you have heard from the other folks that have testified, about half of Rhode Island is currently forested, and about 125,000 acres, or 34% of that forest, is permanently protected. And Audubon protects about 10,000 of those acres. The state, municipalities, the Nature Conservancy, local land trusts protect most of the rest. Most of the remaining forested land is privately owned. Individual properties are typically small, but taken together, these private landowners control about 68% of the state's forest lands. Audubon cares a lot about unfragmented forest. It's important for birds, which our members care desperately about. We have about 17,000 members in Rhode Island. And some, like the scarlet tanager and the barred owl, require unfragmented forests to breed. And as you've been hearing, we're having increased levels of forest fragmentation. It's a significant threat to our forests. About 2,000 acres of core forest was converted to other uses between 2011 and 2018. This bill provides a framework to strengthen the existing partnerships between DEM and the forestry community, these private landowners, as Ken Ayers stated in his testimony. And it puts the value of forests in statute, which is a really important first step and one that we haven't had until now, assuming this bill will pass. The one amendment we'd like you to consider is in the definition section. The definition of forest land is defined as any tract or contiguous tract of land that is 10 acres or larger. And we would suggest considering making that a little smaller, because there are important forest habitat areas owned by landowners that own maybe just 5 acres of forest land, but it's adjacent to other unfragmented forest parcels. So that's a small suggestion, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Meg. Do any members of the committee have any questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Meg. Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
And now I believe we're joined by Rupert Friday. Rupert, welcome to the committee. If you can go ahead and let us know what organization you're representing, what bill you're testifying on, and you can go ahead with your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chair Oyer, members of the Senate Committee on Environment and Agriculture. I'm Rupert Friday. I'm the director of the Rhode Island Land Trust Council, which is the state coalition of over 45 land trusts throughout the state that are working to protect the open space, forests, and special places that define the character of our communities. Thank you for this opportunity to testify on Senate Bill 470, the Forest Conservation Act. Senate Bill 470 replicates the Farmland Preservation Act for forest land. And the Farmland Preservation Act, adopted in 1981, has been very effective in slowing the loss of the state's farmland and permanently conserving farmland to sustain Rhode Island's agricultural industry and locally grown food. We believe that Senate 470 can repeat this success and slow the loss of the state's forest land. And it has several important provisions. As Ken Ayers and others have already explained, this is the first time that the forest benefits are recognized in state legislation. The bill also establishes the Forest Conservation Commission, and this legislation is parallel to the text and structure of the Agricultural Land Preservation Commission. And over the past 40 years, the Agricultural Land Preservation Commission has established a solid track record. However, one provision of the Farmland Preservation Act was omitted from Senate Bill 470 as drafted, and we recommend as an amendment that it be added. A core duty of the Forest Conservation Commission established by 470 should be to adopt rules for administration of the purchase of development rights and criteria for selection of parcels for which development rights may be purchased. We believe this is an essential addition to ensure transparency of and public trust for the state's process of purchasing development rights to conserve forests. The amendment also is necessary to connect Forest Conservation Commission with the Forest Conservation Fund established by this legislation. We recommend a second amendment, and that's the definition of forest land. And I believe Meg Kerr talked about this in her testimony. As currently drafted, the definition requires a tract of land to be 10 acres or larger for provisions of this program. We suggest that it should be changed to 5 acres or larger, and even parcels smaller than 5 acres should qualify if they abut larger forest property that's already protected. Rhode Island has many small forest parcels. Retaining some of these forest properties is essential to preventing fragmentation of large blocks of contiguous forest areas. The conservation of smaller forest properties can also be critical for retaining forest values along streams and floodplains. And as drafted, the definition of forest land in Senate 470 excludes them and should be amended. With these suggestions, the Rhode Island Land Trust Council respectfully requests the committee to support Senate Bill 470 with those amendments, and we'd be happy to work with the committee and the sponsor on language of the sub-A. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rupert. Appreciate it. Are there any committee members with any questions? Okay, hearing none, thank you. And
thank you, Chair.
I believe we will be joined next with Robert Prakachanti. And Robert, are you with us?
I am, thank you.
And if you want to go ahead and let us know what organization you're with, what bill you're testifying, and you can go ahead with your testimony.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. My name is Robert Prakachanti. I grew up in Johnston. I live in Narragansett. I speak to the committee not only as a Rhode Island resident, but also as a member of the Board of Directors of Farm Sanctuary, which is one of the largest farm animal advocacy organizations in the world. I kindly ask the committee to support and pass Senate Bill 471, which would put an end to the sale in Rhode Island, really of one of the most inhumane and heinous products in the world, foie gras, which is literally and deliberately the diseased liver of a duck or a goose. And I think it's important to make this distinction. This bill is not about banning the serving of duck. This bill is about banning serving of a diseased liver of a duck or a goose that is created through force feeding. And really, in the interest of your time, I have submitted written testimony, so I'm not going to read that verbatim. I would just like to make 3 quick points. Number one, despite what a previous caller said, the industry norm and standard for creating foie gras is still to shove a metal pipe down the throat of a duck or a goose and directly injecting food into the bird's stomach, which causes the bird's liver to become diseased, press on its organs, and makes it very difficult for the bird to breathe. So that is the industry standard. So I'm not sure, where that testimony previously came from. In my written testimony, I do have actual photographs of foie gras production that I encourage you to take a look at. And then we also have written testimony from renowned veterinarians and animal welfare scientists who can attest really to the incredible cruelty of this product. Second point is Rhode Island would not be the first to ban this product. It has been banned in New York City and the state of California. Whole Foods refuses to sell it. So again, if this product was humane, I would ask why Whole Foods refuses to sell it. Well-known restaurateurs like Wolfgang Puck refuse to sell it as well. It has been banned by multiple countries around the world, and it is about to be banned by post-Brexit Great Britain as well. So again, if this product was humane, why do entities like the ones I just mentioned continue to ban the product? And then finally, my last point is that there are no farms, and this is an important point, there are no farms in Rhode Island that produce foie gras. So this bill would have zero impact on Rhode Island farming. So it doesn't go against any financial interests of any Rhode Island farm that we have here. And then also, the overwhelming majority of restaurants in Rhode Island do not serve foie gras. So this would not have a negative impact on the Rhode Island restaurant industry. This isn't some type of staple dish or standard dish. It's not like we're saying, hey, let's ban calamari. You know, we're not saying that. We're just saying let's ban this product, which is created through the brutal force feeding of birds. Really, that's all I have to say. And thank you for your time and consideration. Happy to answer any questions.
That was just at 3 minutes. Very well done. Do any of the committee members have any questions for this witness? Okay, hearing none, I anticipate that the sponsor will probably be following up with you. It sounded like you had a lot of information. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I believe we should be joined by Joshua Keston. Josh, if you want to share with the committee what bill you're testifying, if you represent an organization, and you can go ahead with your testimony.
Great. My name is Josh Keston. I'm testifying on behalf of Renew in support of Senate Bill 468. A recent report from the Rhode Island Food Bank indicated that fully 1 in 4 households in our state are food insecure. I want you to take a moment and think about the magnitude of that calamity. 1/4 of Rhode Islanders struggling to eat. I want this committee to just sit and ponder what a moral outrage that is. I want you to think about the fact that there are tens of thousands of children going to bed hungry tonight in our state. I want you to think about the fact that there are tens of thousands of parents skipping dinner tonight so their child can eat in our state. I want you to picture them. I want you to think about the fact that there are tens of thousands of parents who are forced to make heart-wrenching choices in our state about whether to buy food or diapers, whether to buy food or medicine, whether to buy food or housing. And I want you to remember that you were elected to serve the people of Rhode Island. It's your job to protect us. When a hunger crisis of this magnitude grips our state, it's your job to solve it. And when I look around Rhode Island, the state I was born in, the state I love with all my heart, when I look around Rhode Island, it's clear to me that you have not solved the food crisis. It's clear to me that you have failed to do your jobs. Right now, in front of you, you have a bill that would take a giant step towards addressing the appalling crisis of food insecurity and malnutrition in our state. A bill which would address the extreme and terrifying levels of hunger while simultaneously decarbonizing our food system by localizing agricultural production. A bill, I might add, which you have shamefully decided to hold for further study, to effectively kill, before even hearing the testimony of the people who would be impacted by this bill, before even listening to what Rhode Islanders have to say. And don't you dare try to spin what you've done and say that you held it for further study so you could consider the written testimony carefully, et cetera, et cetera. We all know the truth. You held it for further study because you don't want to vote on it. You don't want to vote for it, but you're too cowardly to vote against it. So you're going to take a pass. Well, guess what? You just took a pass on whether kids in our state, kids you have power over, go to sleep hungry tonight. Shame on you. The people of this state have been rejected and ignored by callous and corrupt career politicians year in and year out. But that era is over. Your job is to protect Rhode Islanders. Rhode Islanders are starving.
Madam
You're
Chair,
failing to
point
do
of
your
order.
job.
Point of order.
Good luck in that.
Go ahead, Senator
Correct
Archibald.
your unconscionable failure.
This is the kind, point of order. I'd ask that he be stopped. This is the kind of arrogant, selfless attacks on, self-effacing attacks, attacks on members of the committee that has no place here. That testimony started reasonably sound. And then it spun into all these attacks on how we're failing everybody and we're stopping bills and not listening to what people have to say. All just rubbish, foolish, absolutely not accurate.
It's not accurate that a quarter of households in Rhode Island
Madam Chair, I'm talking and I don't want to be interrupted. Respectfully, right? I'm a senator and I asked to be heard for a point of order. So those kind of comments have no place here. Every one of the senators sitting before me at this committee and everybody we serve with comes here to try to do the best they can with what they have. Comments from the public that focus on criticizing us personally and failing and corruption and all this other stuff is misplaced. It doesn't have any place here. And I'd ask you, Madam Chair, if we're going to get testimony that's going to go off on tangents and make these kind of attacks, that testimony be stopped. Stopped immediately, because it has no place here. If someone wants to call in and testify about the merits of a bill, whether they agree or disagree, I'll listen till the cows come home, no pun intended. But I don't want to hear these personal attacks. They're misplaced, and none of us should be subject to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Archambault. And I would just remind the members of the public, as Senator Archambault has said, we have many important issues facing the state, and this committee is very well aware of them. And the committee members have legislation introduced on these issues that do address these problems. I appreciate the passion and the concern, and I do ask that the testimony stays to the discussion of the bill and the bill in front of us, which is a very dense bill. There's many issues to discuss in the bill. So again, I appreciate the concern and the concern and the urgency of addressing these issues, as do the members of the committee, which is why we hold these public hearings. With that being said, I believe we have our next member of the public to testify, who will be Ben Roth. Ben, I believe you're on with the committee. You can go ahead.
Awesome, thank you. So my name is Ben Roth. I am a resident of Providence, and I'm here to testify in support of Senate Bill 468. So I work in an after-school program, and when COVID first hit, we transitioned from, obviously we couldn't run in-person programs, so one of the first things we did is start to make wellness calls out to the families that we serve. And when I was making those calls, one of the things that I heard the most from lots and lots and lots of people was that they depended on schools for food. And so I tried to gather information about where people could get food, and the schools, they continued handing out food, which was awesome. But even then, a lot of families weren't able to make the trip. They were essential workers. They couldn't make it there at the right times when those places were open. And so I want to testify in support of 468 because I believe that would go a long way towards solving food insecurity in Rhode Island. Also, localizing food production. I think that does a lot for climate change. And one organization that I've heard a lot of good things about through some of the students I worked with is the Southside Community Land Trust. I think the garden application or the garden agriculture grant applications would allow for more organizations like that to prop up around Providence. So yeah, I just think this would be a great bill to solve food insecurity in our community. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ben. And that's actually a really important issue. I think, when there was the Quinnipiac Island gas outage, I think folks didn't realize when that crisis happened how reliant we are in our state for our schools. Our public schools really serve as wraparound service providers in many issues. And so that was actually an issue that we addressed back in 2019, is trying to make sure that we were shoring up those food systems and those the food access around those issues. And I know there's many organizations with boots on the ground that are trying to work with both the DEM and RIDE and many other agencies to try to address those issues. So your point is well taken about the schools and the food insecurity of children. I know many on this committee share that concern, so I appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
I believe we are now joined by Camilla Pekla. And
Hi, yes.
Hi, welcome to the committee. If you want to introduce yourself, state if you're with any organization, let us know what bill you're testifying on, and you can go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Camilla, and I am testifying on behalf of myself in support of Senate Bill 468. In kindergarten, I was taught about the 5 kingdoms. We learned that the members of the animal kingdom need 4 basic things to survive: air, water, shelter, and food. Now, I personally believe that clean air, water, and shelter should be provided to everyone, and it can be if we pass the other 2 bills of the Rescue Rhode Island Act. But today, I'm here to talk about Bill 468 and the 4th necessity, food. I will not assume that the members of this committee have never experienced food insecurity, but I am asking those of you who have not to take a moment to attempt to imagine what it would feel like to have this basic need go unmet. This is not a want. This is not a frivolous ask. This is a scientific, fundamental human need. I believe that it is the responsibility of the human race to support one another in the fight for our basic needs. Senator Ayers, if you did not have access to your basic needs of survival, I would fight for you. I hope today you will fight for us.
Thank you, Camilla. We appreciate your time and your testimony. Again, I ask that the members of the public please stick to the contents of the bill. I believe the bill's over almost 40 pages. There's a lot of subject matter here that we could discuss at the hearing tonight. I believe we're now joined by Gregory Greco. Gregory, if you can let us know who you're testifying on behalf of, and also the name, which bill number you're testifying for, and you can go ahead with your testimony.
Hello, my name is Greg Greco. I'm testifying for Bill S. 468. I'm testifying for myself, and I'm a strong supporter of this legislation. For too many years, we've left too many of our fellow Rhode Island citizens food insecure. We do not have environmentally friendly, sustainable kind of food transportation. We need to improve the infrastructure of the way we deliver food, and I feel like this legislation does that in the dramatic way that we need to kind of both make sure that we have we take care of our most vulnerable citizens and respect the environment, which is currently under crisis, as we all know. And again, this is the exact kind of bold legislation that we need our leaders to support, because again, the environment is not going to get better by us sitting and doing nothing, and we're not going to feed our most vulnerable people by continuing to follow the same policies that we have. So again, this is legislation that takes the bold steps that we need to improve the lives of every person in this state. And I think some of the frustration, again, that people who are talking have is that we feel like these are big crises and they need bold support. And we see legislators who are willing to tackle this and willing to stand up for those who are most vulnerable in our community. And we're asking all of you to do the same. And I don't think that's a ton to ask. And some people are doing that, with passion because they believe strongly in what we are trying to do here. And I do too. So please, the passion that we bring is to make sure that the people who are food insecure are taken care of, and that we take care of environment through food policy. So thank you very much for your time. And again, we need to see advocates who are going to fight for people. And if we don't see that, we're going to find people who do. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregory. Appreciate the passion and appreciate the concern. Again, that is shared by many on this committee, and we do appreciate your testimony tonight. I believe we are joined now by Marco David Carrasco. And Marco, you should be on with the committee. And if you could introduce yourself, state if you're with an organization, and you can go ahead with your testimony.
All right, thank you. So yes, my name is Marco David Carrasco. I'm currently a resident of Carson, and I'm testifying on behalf of myself in support of Senate Bill S-468. So food insecurity is a major issue for thousands of Rhode Islanders, especially now during this pandemic. According to the Rhode Island Community Food Bank, 1 in 4 households in Rhode Island lacks adequate food, with rates even higher for Black and brown families. Additionally, most of our food currently comes from outside the region and relies on highly carbon-intensive supply chains that exploit migrant workers. With this bill, we can start building a new food system that addresses these issues. This bill proposes a network of democratically governed community land trusts throughout Rhode Island that will pay workers a fair wage to produce food in ways that don't damage our environment. It will also subsidize local farms to adopt or continue to use agricultural practices that improve soil health and sequester carbon in the ground. I support this bill because I believe that we can both fix our state's long-standing food insecurity issues and support local agriculture while also reducing our state's carbon emissions and increasing our resilience to extreme weather events. Senator Joshua Miller, I'm one of your constituents.
Thank you, Marco. We appreciate your testimony. And I believe that we have our next member of the public. Just one moment. If the committee can just bear with us for a moment, we are trying to get the next caller. There's been a few people that we've tried who haven't answered yet, so we're going through the list to try to find the next person who will want to give public testimony. Hello, I believe that we have Emma Booten on with us. Emma, I believe you're on, and if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to the committee, let us know what organization, if any, you're representing, as well as what bill you want to testify on, and you can go ahead with your testimony.
Hi, my name is Emma Boughton. I'm 23 years old. I live in Providence, and I'm here to testify on behalf of myself in support of Senate Bill 468. I am deeply disappointed that you have cut off the speakers who have come before me. You cut off a 19-year-old sharing about the impacts of food insecurity.
Thank you, Ms. Booten. Would you like to testify? That's okay. Yeah. The committee can hang tight. We're having some technical issues. I believe we should have Maura Kitterick on with us. Maura, if you want to introduce yourself to the committee, let us know what bill you're testifying on, and you can, and if you're representing any organization, and you can go ahead with your testimony.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Hello, my name is Mara. I'm 15 years old, and I live in Cranston. I am here tonight on behalf of myself in support of Bill 468. Growing up, my family didn't have much money. My dad worked while my mom mainly stayed home to care for her 4 children. Because of the tight budget, we were unable to buy certain foods or sometimes even enough food. As a result, my parents instilled upon me a great sense of gratitude for the food we did have. During meals, my mom would tell us to eat until we had a happy plate. A happy plate is when you eat all of the food on your plate so you do not waste any of it. We didn't have the luxury to waste food. As a young child, the term happy plate was engraved into my head, teaching me to savor my meals, to truly be thankful for my meals, as it is a privilege to eat good food. But having access to good food should not be considered a privilege. It is a basic human right. One's income should not determine their access to quality food, as we all need food to survive. Something must be done, and something can be done. Through Bill 468, local farms and gardens would be invested in, creating a supply of local and healthy food that is not only sustainable, but accessible to all. As a result, Rhode Island will become much greener, helping to combat the climate crisis. I am 15 years old, and I am terrified. I stay up at night scared that I won't have a future, that my children won't have futures as a result of the climate crisis. I should be worrying about who will take me to prom in the future, not whether or not I will have a future. As senators, if you do not use your position and your influence to help Rhode Islanders, you do not deserve to be a senator. So prove that you are worthy of your seats. Support this bill. Senator Miller, when was the last time you had to worry about having a happy plate?
Thank you, Maura. We really appreciate your public testimony, and sharing your personal story is very helpful to the committee, and we appreciate your testimony. Thank you. Just to let the committee know, we're working on getting the next witness.
Could I make a comment while we're waiting for the next call?
Go ahead, Senator Miller.
Yeah, I noticed that like 3 of the callers have either said or attempted to say my name. And I'm not sure where they get the idea that I might be opposed to this legislation 468, but that's totally misunderstood if they think I have any lack of consideration or intent to support this type of legislation. It's just, I think, important for other people who testify to know that.
Yep. Thank you, Senator Miller. I think the sentiment is shared, that I know many members of the committee work on these food access issues through numerous pieces of legislation. So it is disappointing to be able to be distracted from being able to address these really important issues in this forum. So I would definitely, again, ask the public that, again, this is almost a 40-page bill. There is a lot of content to discuss. I understand the frustration and urgency that members of the public are feeling, and also we have to understand that this committee process is geared towards really vetting these pieces of legislation so that we can determine how to best move forward and address these critical issues. With that, I believe we have the next member of the public to testify. And
yes, I believe you do. Hello, my name is Spencer Reed. I'm testifying on behalf of Bill 468. I'd also like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify and ask that as speakers on other bills have been given, I be given the right to my full 3 minutes of testimony. So I think that this is an incredibly important bill. As someone who's worked in the education system extensively, I've seen the effects of food insecurity on young people who go to homes where they don't have ready access to food, who talk about the bare cupboards they experience, the lack of access to nutritious meals when a low-quality, underfunded public school meal is the only access to nutrition that a child has. That has an extremely deleterious effect on that child's life, on their ability to develop, on their education, on all aspects of their life. We know, of course, that food insecurity is not evenly distributed among the population, that young black and brown people face higher levels of food insecurity than young white people, that people who are low income obviously have a harder time affording food. And I think that the urgency of this issue is reflected in the feelings of the community that are speaking on it. I think also, on the other hand, the other side of this bill that restructures our agricultural system speaks to the incredibly pressing climate crisis. That's something that I, as a young person, am extremely concerned about. I see the effects of climate change every day. I've lived in places where massive agricultural monoculture factory farms destroy the environment, destroy the soil, and I would not like to see that happen to Rhode Island. I would instead like to see regenerative agricultural practices developed here that provide a sustainable system of food to all people in Rhode Island. And I'd also say that, to quote the great black abolitionist Frederick Douglass, he said this: "If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will." And right now, what I believe you are hearing are the roar of the waters of the ocean and the cry of people unheard. And I would ask that you listen to that and stop cutting us off and allow us to share our feelings. Thank you. Please support this legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. We're waiting to get our next witness, which I believe is Margaret Devos. Margaret, you should be on with the committee if you want to go ahead and state your name, which organization you're representing, what bill you're testifying on, and you can go ahead with your testimony.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm testifying on Bill 468. My name is Margaret Devos. I'm the Executive Director of the Southside Community Land Trust, and I've been with the organization for 9 years. It was founded in 1981 in South Providence, and we currently host a network of 52 community gardens and urban and rural farms in Providence, Pawtucket, Central Falls, Cranston, and Tiverton. Over 3,000 people who live in low-income households eat from our gardens year after year, meal after meal. We provide low-cost leases to 25 farmers, almost entirely low and moderate income farmers, on 27 acres of land. 12,000 people purchase food from these farmers every year. Most of the food is sold in Providence, Pawtucket, and Central Falls. We provide summer and after-school employment for 50 high school kids. We operate 3 production farms, all in urban settings. 1 of youth enterprise farms. Our direct-to-consumer sales are about $115,000 each year. We've started construction on a 12,000-square-foot healthy food hub in South Providence. We're expanding our veggie prescription program, which was piloted last year in Pawtucket with 100 people, and the Integra Community Care Network. I'm here to thank you for introducing and supporting and encouraging you to support this effort to invest funds into developing a food system that meets the needs of low-income families while also protecting our planet by promoting sustainable agriculture. The good news is that when people have control over the assets of the food system, gardens, farms, distribution, stores, people figure out how to get their communities fed. This is true across race, geography, income. We see it happening every day in community gardens, farms, and programs we operate. This effort we're discussing tonight is hugely important. Low-income families need access to a food system that isn't the emergency food system, which is never enough. It can't be the industrial food system alone, which doesn't offer food in categories, at prices, or amounts that meet nutritional needs. We need a new food system that actually works to keep low and moderate income families fed, healthy, employed, energized, and safe from harmful chemicals. I have some specific comments about the legislation that are pretty detailed, and I'd like to offer them maybe in a letter, follow-up letter to this. I just really want to say that fundamentally, This is a great step in the right direction. It needs to be sure that it's designed to work with the existing efforts that many Rhode Island residents have already created, gardens, farms, collaboration projects that are trying to accomplish this work. These people and the enterprises they have created are here to help advance the goals of this legislation and need to be recognized as what they are, which is a great investment opportunity for the state. There are some other ideas that I have about how to benefit low-income communities and address food access needs while supporting sustainable agriculture, and I look forward to not spending your time with that, but submitting a written documentation as a follow-up.
Thank you, Margaret. I appreciate that. This committee always welcomes written testimony, and having that level of detail about specific aspects is incredibly helpful as we work through legislation. And I would also encourage you to make sure that you're working with the sponsor. Typically, after we have these hearings, it is the sponsor who will take the feedback and be able to work with all of the parties who have weighed in so that we can really understand how to best move forward. So we would absolutely welcome your written testimony.
Thank you.
And now I believe we should be joined by Madison Emmond, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name, but if you want to introduce yourself to the committee and let us know if you're representing an organization and what bill you're testifying on, and you can go ahead with your testimony.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, my name is Madison Emmond. I'm testifying on behalf of myself and in support for Bill 468. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Take your time.
So, okay, here we go. The United States is going to face a food crisis if we do not fundamentally change the way that we farm. Monocrop agriculture is reliant on the exploitation of the land. Our harvests give nothing back to the soil. As a result, our soil is becoming nutrient deficient. To make matters worse, much of our food grown in the Midwest draws on the Ogallala Aquifer, an underground pocket of water that spans 174,000 square miles. That is more than 143 times the size of our own state, and it is responsible for irrigating and watering 1/5 of the wheat, corn, cotton, as well as cattle produced in the United States. Despite the enormity of this underground body of water, the aquifer will not last forever and is estimated to be 70% depleted by 2060. In short, each ear of corn, every tomato, every cucumber, every eggplant, every kind of soil-dependent food crop harvested leaves the aquifer a little more empty and its soil a little less nutritious, drawing us closer to mass starvation here in the United States, and that is not an exaggeration. Ever since I've learned about this inevitable crisis in 2014, it has scared me. It scares me to imagine those fields, previously nitrogen-dense and nutrient-dense topsoil populated by grasslands and forests, completely barren, essentially transformed into nutrient-absent deserts. We will be forced to turn to our own land and our own people here in Rhode Island to provide the majority of the food we eat anyways. So why should we wait for this inevitable outcome to force our hand in 40 years or possibly less? We should prepare now. Invest in our local agriculture and our community members now, so our state does not find itself in a state of mass food insecurity and starvation. Madam Chair Ayers, we are facing an emergency. We cannot afford to have lawmakers in meaningful positions of power that do not act like it. If you and all the members of this committee do not pass Bill 468, which will substantially contribute to our state's efforts to mitigate the damage of this impending food crisis, I will make sure that I find a candidate to run against you and each of your fellow committee members come 2022. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. And I believe the next caller we have will be David Velis. And David, I believe you should be on with the committee, and if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to the committee, let us know if you're with an organization, what bill you're testifying on, and you can go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you very much. My name is David Velis. I'm actually here on behalf of 3 organizations. First, I'm the director of the Rhode Island Interfaith Coalition to Reduce Poverty. I'm also one of the co-chairs of the Rhode Island Poor People's Campaign, and I'm the Environmental Justice Chair and Vice Chair of the Rhode Island Sierra Club. And we're here tonight to support Senate Bill 468. Thank you to Senator Anderson for introducing this bill and for everyone who signed on. I'm really excited about this bill. I think it addresses two things that I really care about. One, it addresses climate change, and it addresses food security. According to the Rhode Island Food Bank, 25% of Rhode Island households have food insecurity. That number obviously is disproportionately impacting communities of color and low-income communities. Costs for food assistance are at an all-time high. I think we've seen thousands and thousands of more people during the pandemic wanting and needing food and using food subsidies. This is no time to go backwards, and I think this legislation finally connects two things. It connects the environment and social justice concerns. I'm excited as an organizer and as an environmental justice organizer for the last over 20 years. I personally have seen how local food systems have changed communities. Most of my career has been in community or community garden organizing, and I've seen how having access to fresh food has changed the community. We haven't really impacted the community here in Rhode Island. We're almost 10% of Rhode Islanders live in poverty. That number jumps to 22% when you're looking at Black and Latino communities. So this bill will go a long way not only to curb our carbon footprint, but it will also give a chance to develop just and local food systems that would feed our communities. So we supported the three organizations that I mentioned supported, and I'm just really grateful to have this opportunity to support it. And thank you all for listening to me as well.
Thank you, David. Appreciate your testimony. And I believe we're waiting to reach the next caller. We've been trying to reach a number of folks who aren't picking up, so just so the public knows and the committee members know, we're going to just have to pause for a minute. I believe we have with us Alon Upfall, and I apologize if I didn't get your name right, but if you could introduce yourself to the committee, let us know if you're representing anyone and what bill you're testifying on, and you can go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Alon Upfall, and I'm testifying on behalf of myself today in support of Senate Bill 468. I'm a lifelong Rhode Islander and currently also a student at Brown University studying engineering to be able to work at the forefront of my generation's moonshot challenge to save our planet and create more opportunity for all of us in the process. I remember being a young teenager and finding out that the way we grow our food is destroying our planet, eroding our soil, and exploiting workers. I was devastated. At the same time, I was so curious about how we could do things differently. I visited farmers around this state and met incredible people breaking their backs and defying the odds of a food system bent on keeping them out to grow food the way they knew was better for all of us. At the Southside Community Land Trust in Providence, I met Rich, a welcoming and joyful farmer and educator who has built a place for people of all ages to come together and learn about how food can be grown in a way that is good for the planet and us as well. I saw what can be possible when the space is made for local sustainable food initiatives, but the odds are stacked against these incredible farms and community gardens. This bill would be the powerful public investment that our farms need to provide Rhode Islanders with the jobs and healthy food that we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. And I believe we should be with Zoe Mermelstein. And Zoe, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and state which organization you're with and what bill you're testifying on, and you can go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you. I'm Zoe Mermelstein, a resident and voter of Providence, and I'm calling in support of Senate Bill 468 in my capacity as president of College Democrats of Rhode Island. Senators, I would like to remind you that this bill is not only a morally necessary step to addressing the climate crisis and resolving food shortages that the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated. This bill is green policy at its very best because it is sustainable and is in the best interest of workers and the economic future of Rhode Island. You should support it because it will bolster the economic futures of Rhode Island farmers, and you prioritize homegrown agricultural commerce over enormous firms from outside the state. You should support it because it will protect Rhode Island workers, whom giant industrialized firms have exploited alongside the environment, and you are in favor of living wages and job creation. You should support it because you are privileged to be among Rhode Island's beautiful shorelines, forests, fields, and wetlands, which this bill will rehabilitate. And you should support it because this bill will put the power to grow and disseminate food in the hands of low and middle income communities that need it, and you know it is in the best interest of your constituents to have enough food to eat. As I said in the Judiciary Committee on Monday in support of Renew Rhode Island's other two bills, we at College Democrats of Rhode Island are advocating for this legislation because we are invested in the long-term well-being of this state, and we desperately want the Bryant, Uri, Roger Williams, Brown, Providence College, and Salve Regina students we represent to believe they have a future by staying here after they complete their studies. As young Rhode Islanders planning our futures, we need to know that this is a state where we can safely and healthily create roots, start families, pursue careers, and live in community with one another. Low-income students need to know that they and their families can expect to have as prosperous futures as their peers, or at the very least have access to quality food. This bill provides a crucial step in investing in a health, safe, equitable, and sustainable future for our state. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony.